Day 117 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I am licensed to drive in the state of New York. I'm just trying to help myself. A practical question one may ask when considering the actions of the Trump administration and the leader of the Trump administration is, how is it possible for people to get so much pleasure from the misfortune of others? Even as I ask myself that simple question when I am talking to myself, which I do, please don't judge me, I already know the answer because we see it daily. We see it when there's a fender bender on the local road. Why is that traffic backed up? That backed up traffic isn't because of the accident. People are looking at the accident because they want to be distracted from whatever miserable thing is going on in their lives. They see it and say, oh, look, it's Oprah. She got into a fender bender and she has to deal with some bullshit, and I don't. Little do they know, in that very moment, they are dealing with some bullshit. They are dealing with their shortcomings as human beings. Now, I'm not trying to tell you I'm any different. You think I just stare ahead like a goddamn fucking crazy person and not look at what the hell is going on? Of course I don't. But I am also aware that I am doing that. I am aware that I'm doing it, and I'm aware of why I'm doing it. And that is the difference between me and likely you and the Trump administration and the leader of the Trump administration. There is no self-awareness. If there were, these people would be at the point of a complete and total nervous breakdown. When you have to look at yourself in the cold light of day, and I don't even know what that means because it is not cold and it is not that light out either. It's pretty gray, frankly. When you have to look at yourself in a not that cold, gray light of day, that is just too overwhelming, too confrontational, and too impossible. When you are almost as old as the sun, obscured by clouds. Even if you're one of these relatively young members of the Trump administration, it doesn't matter. Whether you are lying to Congress about presumed innocent people whom you illegally deported and jailed, or you are lying to journalists about presumed innocent people the Trump administration illegally deported and jailed, there's a reason you are doing that. Even though the stakes are so much greater, the same reason motivates us to look at that fender bender. The Trump administration is an accident that will be cleared soon enough. Try to keep your eyes on the road and ignore the Trump administration. Day 118 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I am just trying to help myself. FBB Mini asks, what happened to his 34 counts? Can you recap that for us? Sure. The leader of the Trump administration was sentenced on January 10, 2025. Judge Juan Merchand issued an unconditional discharge, meaning the leader of the Trump administration received no jail time, fines, or probation, although he remains a convicted felon. Now, I consider that an all-around win for the leader of the Trump administration because he was hoping to use his status as the president-elect to avoid being held accountable for his convictions. On top of that, his followers seem to think that being a 34-time convicted felon is kind of cool, and that maybe they can aspire to be convicted felons too. How does this relate to our daily lives? The only way it relates is in the purpose behind 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. It serves as another reminder that if we get wrapped up into thinking too hard about this, we only take time away from thinking about ourselves. We are only taking away energy from our happiness. We are only taking away focus from what brings us pleasure and satisfaction. The law is a made-up thing to keep society functioning in a way that is beneficial to the inhabitants of that society, and it is up to the inhabitants of that society, which is you and me, to abide by those laws for the better good. Nefarious actors like the leader of the Trump administration and those he has gathered around him, also known as the Trump administration, are going to behave with a very loose fidelity to the rule of law. For instance, we have the Supreme Court, which is another made up thing where a bunch of people go to school and then they are good at doing homework for a really long time. And then they are given robes. Do the homework, get the robe, and then you get to make decisions for everybody. Except, as we have seen with the Trump administration, they don't really care about those decisions. They'll just do what they want. And so, what I am saying and why I responded to your comment was not to get into the particulars of these 34 convictions, but to point out that the leader of the Trump administration does not give a flying fuck about the law. And if we give a flying fuck about him not giving a flying fuck about the law, then that only takes away our precious time. I enjoy taking this moment to wake us both up before I go, to paraphrase George Michael of Wham. But now I must do something else. What I am saying when I say that FBB mini is I am telling you to ignore the Trump administration. Day 119 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I am just trying to help myself. Today's edition of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration is for MAGA. If you are not MAGA, please scroll away. MAGA, hello. First, while you may take pride in it, maybe you don't like the word pride, but let me know in the comments. While you may like it, I am not sure why you would want to be part of a group called MAGA in the first place. It is not a pretty word, although maybe you do not like the word pretty. It's just not a great word. It reminds me of maggots, and I think we can all agree that we don't like maggots. That thought alone leads me to a bigger idea of what we can agree on. The leader of the Trump administration is a beautiful, charismatic, spellbinding figure to you, yes? You would not defend him so vigorously if you didn't feel that way. I understand why you defend him so vigorously. The leader of the Trump administration is a person who has spent his life learning and dedicating himself to becoming the world's leading expert on manipulating people's emotions to arrive at a certain outcome. Now, I know that many people insinuate that MAGA is a cult. I have known people in cults. They didn't think they were in a cult till they were out of the cult, and I can tell you that in my own life, I have fallen under the spell of people. That is sometimes a thing that happens when you befriend somebody and allow yourself to be vulnerable, to let your guard down, to trust them without fully getting to observe them over a long period of time. I am saying them instead of he or she, and I hope that doesn't offend you. I think you know what I mean. Something else that we all can agree on is that we all have private thoughts. We all have to be with our private thoughts at some point during the day. It doesn't matter how tough we present ourselves to the world, we all have to deal with the voices in our heads eventually. MAGA. Have you ever wondered if you might be happier with those voices speaking to you about love for all people instead of hate for others? Voices that suggest embracing everyone who suffers the human condition, encouraging you to grow as a human being and hoping for you to find comfort in a world that is impermanent. If you are an adult watching this now and you wear one of those red hats that's the size of an adult human man's skull, then you're probably halfway through your life by now, and it is up to you to determine how you would like to lead it. I leave you now on day 119 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration with the idea that communicating with people who are not like you can help us all understand life in a way we couldn't before. And it can help us ignore the Trump administration. Day 120 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm Josh Bloom. I'm just trying to do what? Help myself. One of the reasons the leader of the Trump administration can leverage the support of a huge portion of the world population is because he knows how people behave. That is his skill as someone who is a master manipulator. Look at ants. I'm talking about the insects, not your mom's sister, though it applies. Ants don't have a wide range of behavior. Neither do people. You can use that information to your advantage when you understand that. You can understand people because their behaviors and range of behaviors are not particularly unique at all. If you are a person who is inclined to understand that, you can live a happier existence by taking into account people's behaviors and the motivations behind those behaviors. You can use that knowledge to help other people achieve their own level of personal understanding through your empathy and subsequent action, which is, in my opinion, a good thing for the world. Unfortunately, some people use that knowledge for nefarious personal gain. Now, let me make it clear. I think it is personal gain when I choose to use my understanding of behavior to help other people achieve their own greater level of happiness and make the world a better place. Because when other people achieve greater levels of happiness, it makes me feel good about myself. It makes me feel more optimistic and more hopeful when I am mindful of my behavior towards others. And those are feelings I want to have because those are feelings that make life bearable and less like a steaming pile of shit. I enjoy being there emotionally for fellow travelers. Like Julia Fox, as mentioned in the Charlie XCX song 360, I'm everywhere. But other people, like the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration, feel good when they make other people feel miserable. And why would they do that? Probably because they feel miserable. And so that is why we see the leader of the Trump administration's completely insincere statement about Joe Biden's cancer diagnosis. He isn't interested in Joe Biden's happiness. We know this based on the history of behavior of the leader of the Trump administration. Furthermore, we know from that history of behavior that this statement is meant to manipulate us into thinking that the leader of the Trump administration is sincere, because to think otherwise is to recognize that we should ignore the Trump administration. Day 121 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm a recovering jerk, and I'm just trying to help myself. I was mean when I was growing up, and even into adulthood, because that's the environment I grew up in. I grew up with mean parenting, and that's the world I knew until I realized that I was not happy. And then I started doing the work to be different. Don't get it twisted. I still put up videos saying to retweet the leader of the Trump administration's insincere message about Joe Biden's cancer if he's ever diagnosed with cancer. My light hypocrisy is critical of the behavior of the President of the United States. It is not comparable to the relentless, constant, unending onslaught of anger, grievance, and humiliation that the leader of the Trump administration brings down on anybody who attracts his negative attention at any minute of the day or night. I have always said that my overall gripe with this guy is that he is so mean. His meanness means that it was his awful parents and their awful parenting that led his brother to drink himself to death, and for the leader of the Trump administration to become the man we now know. Why continue like this? What does he get out of being so mean? His defense of this behavior is that he was harassed first, and his philosophy in life is that when attacked, attack back harder. Even from the perspective of the leader of the Trump administration who believes that he is a victim, at some point, don't you just think, it's just not worth it. It's just not worth the energy. It's not worth the time. I've got grandkids. What am I doing? But I understand why he's like this, and I understand that he has no reason at his age to change. It is an unfortunate example of how when a person gets completely dug in at looking at the world a certain way, it becomes impossible to see anything else. And in this case, it is unfortunate for humanity. The leader of the Trump administration's insincere tweet about Joe Biden was followed up by a disgusting tweet from his son. This is how a diseased mind is passed down. It's like, leader of the Trump administration, Jr., why? You have children, dude. Children who are bound to, at some point, reflect, why is my father a person who viciously attacks a man who has just announced that he's dying of cancer? Why is my father like that? I hope that if those children ever say that to themselves, it is because they are on a journey to a more mindful, optimistic, and hopeful life. And it is because they have chosen to ignore the Trump administration. Day 122 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru, and I'm not a blabbermouth either. I'm just trying to help myself. I mentioned before that I'm currently writing about an artist. That artist has told me very clearly there are certain things they're talking about with me in the context of us being friends that I cannot write about. I understand why I can't write about them, because if I write about them, it will cause problems for people. It's not because these topics are anything particularly severe. It is because they are long-standing gripes. Long-standing legitimate gripes that have never been discussed or resolved. I won't be discussing them because they're not for me to discuss. They're private matters between specific people. But what I will do in relation to 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration is to encourage you to do in your life what I would like to also do in mine, which is to have difficult discussions. In this case, I don't have the chance to have that discussion because the party I want to have that difficult discussion with has chosen, at least for the moment, not to have that difficult discussion with me. I hope you will have those difficult discussions if you can. The leader of the Trump administration avoids difficult discussions because difficult discussions mean having to look at oneself. It means hearing the person on the other side of the discussion and being open to what they're saying. Do you think it was easy for Paul McCartney to go to John Lennon and say, "Hey man, I have some issues with you setting up a cot for Yoko Ono in the studio"? I'm sure it was, but he was able to talk about it, and they still went ahead and performed on that rooftop anyway, now didn't they? When you have a difficult discussion, whether you believe what the other person says is true or whether you believe what they say resonates with you at all, it resonates with them on some level. So the difficulty is not in believing what they say, it's not in believing what they say, and it's not in believing part of what they say. The difficulty is in hearing what they say at all. So I encourage everyone, as part of ignoring the Trump administration, to take that extra time that you might have as you pull away from hearing the news of what the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration are doing every day. Use that time to reach out to somebody you would like to have a better relationship with and try to open that door to a difficult discussion. Perhaps you could start the conversation with, "Hello, I have been ignoring the Trump administration." Day 123 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. In politics, you either have to get off on helping people or you get off on hurting people. I will explain and you let me know if you disagree in the comments. There's been so much talk about Joe Biden recently because of a book about him and the quote unquote cover up regarding his mental acuity during his presidency. I'm not interested in discussing that here on 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration, but what I am interested in discussing, as always, is how that relates to the human condition. There are bad politicians and there are less bad politicians, but at the end of the day, they are all taking that money. You either get off on helping people or you get off on hurting people. That's the bottom line because it doesn't matter what you do for a living, you're still cashing a check. And if you're a politician, you ain't living like a pauper. You're cashing a fat check no matter what. I'm not saying that check is your main motivation, but it doesn't matter because you're still cashing that fat check, hunty. So, the only thing that can make any politician any different from any other politician is whether they get off. And when I say get off, I use those words very specifically because you have to be passionate and motivated to help people. It has to be something that brings you pleasure. So you either have to get off on helping people or you get off on hurting people because there are plenty of people out there who get off on hurting people. They love it when someone suffers at their hand. We want people who lift people up and they feel good about it. We want people who go home and brag, I helped X amount of people get paid today. I got paid, so they got paid. They don't get paid, so I get paid more. That is the difference in the politicians we want. We got to scope out who is a piece of shit and who is a piece of heaven. Maybe it's Buttigieg. Maybe it's AOC. Bernie's too old, but Bernie could be the wise man on high. A new cabinet position called the go-to dude. But remember, they're still all politicians. They're all still getting paid. They're all still multi-house having motherfuckers. So those people have to be people who enjoy seeing their constituents prosper and feel good. So that when they look up at them at their big house on the hill, they'll say, I like who lives up there. And not, oh, that dude up there wants to make sure I stay down here. That sounds like the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration to me. And when I hear that sound, I ignore the Trump administration.